Welcome to the Mr. Beacon podcast, a landmark episode. We've got the return of one of our favorite guests. We have quite a few of those, but this one, Quuppa's CEO, Fabio Bologna, has been on the show 3 times before, so this will be his 4th visit, but his first as the new man in charge of the company. So previously he's held roles being responsible for the product and customer success. Now he's at the helm, and so we're going to be asking him for an update on Quuppa. It's been a while, actually, before the pandemic when he was last on. So there's a lot has happened. The product line's had a refresh, and Quuppa is a phenomenal company. They pioneered angle of arrival, and they have some massive customers that are using this technology for very precise, very rapid real-time location of items. I've used their product as a consultant, and that project was very successful. So it's always good to check in with Fabio. He's a great guy. He's going to be talking about some interesting customer stories and how the market landscape is changing. So I think that'll be interesting. For me, this is also an important milestone because I am leaving Wiliot. It's a company I've been privileged to work at for almost 8 years. I joined in the first year, a few months into the founding, and happened upon them partly as a result of my book and maybe even this podcast. And I'd resolved never to work for another boss again and to do my own thing, my own companies, my own consulting. But what Wiliot was doing and is doing was so phenomenal that I had the privilege of joining as employee number 13, the first employee outside of Israel, the first one outside of the core R&D team. And I've had an amazing time with the company. But I'm leaving to start another company focused on ambient intelligence, the intersection of the battery-free Bluetooth technology that Wiliot has pioneered and a wave of AI technology that's impossible to resist digging into. So the new technology will be working on top of Wiliot's platform as well as others. And I'm hoping that Wiliot will be a stakeholder in the company and that the new company will be a customer of Wiliot's with a special relationship. It's tough to leave Wiliot because 2025 is going to be an amazing year, probably the most amazing year other than when the first product came out for the company. There's some massive customers that I think are going to go public in ways that will really turn heads. There's a new generation of technology coming, which is part of what's inspiring me to start up this new company. I think it's going to be groundbreaking technology. But I have always been in love with Wiliot ever since I came across it. But I'm also mesmerized by the opportunity to combine agentic AI agents, with a knowledge of the physical world to bring AI and the physical world together in a way that's not being done at the moment. And I think there's huge opportunities to create some incredible user experiences, some business value, and also to empower people with more knowledge about the things around them, where they came from, their carbon footprint, food safety. And that's really downstream from where Wiliot is focusing, has to focus, should focus, which is working with some of the biggest companies in the world to bring visibility to their supply chains. What I want to focus on is more in the consumer's hands, and I want to create some fun experiences with a mobile app that can use AI and a knowledge of the places and things that people are at. So I'm in fundraising mode and getting a lot of great interest from some wonderful companies. So please stay in touch. I think that Wiliot will continue to sponsor this show, but if they don't, then I may be in the market for other sponsors to cover the production costs. But I'm still going to remain a student of this ecosystem. it's a fascinating area where we have to weave business, technology, human nature into one thing. And there's so much to learn about that I want to continue to have these conversations to keep in touch with Wiliot and check in with them periodically on how they're doing, as well as all of the other companies that have a role to play around them. So enough about me. Let's get back to Quuppa and Fabio and see all the amazing work that company is doing. Fabio, welcome to the Mr. Beacon podcast. You're not a stranger. It's good to have you back.
Thank you, Stephen. It's great to be back here, and it feels like home.
Yeah, I remember when I wrote the Beacon Technologies book, I discovered Quuppa. So this was like a decade ago, I guess. And your technology fascinated me. So you've been on the show a few times, but why don't we kick off just for folks that have not heard about the company? Can you just do a recap on who Quuppa are and what you do?
Yes, absolutely. So Quuppa is a company that was founded back in 2012, originally as a spin-off of Nokia. And myself and the founders of Quuppa, we were working in a team called Local Connectivity and Indoor Positioning. So our challenge was pretty straightforward. It was like, take a phone, take away the GPS, use any radio, any sensor to try to position the device. So that was the mission in a way. And then from there, we got very creative. We started to use Bluetooth, the very early Bluetooth. It was actually not even Bluetooth back then. It was called WeBree. And already at that time, we figured out that by using a certain characteristic of the signal, like the phase, we could actually compute the direction from where the signal could propagate. So now, fast forwarding many years, so at the core of the Quuppa solution offering, there is a Bluetooth angle of arrival technology. We can use standard, or we have a proprietary implementation of that, in a way like an extension of the standard, like iBeacon could be, or Ediston. And what we can do is to very reliably and accurately measure the direction of propagation of the signal, and therefore to position an object. And when I say real time and reliable, I mean it, because, for instance, we are currently deployed in about 90 stadiums, ice hockey stadiums, where we actually track since 4 years every professional ice hockey games in the Finnish league, Norwegian league, German league, and a few other teams across Europe. So if you need something that goes, 10 centimeter, 150 millisecond latency, we can do it. We track puck, player, referee, everything that moves on ice. And that's when we do it really for timeness and real time and accuracy. But we also have many deployments in industrial sites, manufacturing, logistics, plenty of metal and radio disturbances. That's in a way is our secret recipe, is how do you make use of the radio information to compute reliably the location of the object. So this is in the very core of Quuppa, is a very reliable and stable and scalable offering. And then over the years, I believe, Stephen, I was on your show maybe before COVID the last time.
Yes.
So what has happened between that and now, beside, COVID and unfortunately a lot of pain, it was that we kind of expanded our offering. So instead of just giving the famous dot on the map, we actually have some software layer, more tags, and if we consider ourselves as a solution provider, an end-to-end solution provider, where the lower end is really in the core of the platform, from tag, silicon, radios, and firmware. But the upper layer is practically depending on the type of customer we work with. And in some case, we can work directly with end customer to provide to them something valuable. In other case, we work with system integrator. In other case, we work with solution partner. The platform is very open, so it can be integrated at different levels, so to say.
So, how often does it work standalone, and how often is it integrated into other systems? Is using Quuppa standalone ever a thing, or are you always welded into some kind of enterprise app? And if so, what kind of apps do you integrate with?
It's a really good mix. That's a good question. So when we do, I would say most of the time there is always an app, a third-party app on top. Some layers that convert our data into actionable information that are relevant to the end customer. So, like in the case of hockey that I mentioned before, we have a partner called Wise Hockey that transforms the coordinate into metrics that are relevant for sport. When we go into industrial side, our technology can be either paired with, for instance, video tracking, in some cases being paired with GPS tracking, and then other cases, so even with some ultra wideband or some other technology. And then the data harmonization is done on the software layer. We have our own layer where we can try to harmonize the data, or otherwise we have partners with their own layers. And then there is the rule engine that comes on top. So typically we try to stay as Quuppa away from what we call the business rule engine. So there is always, even in industrial side, something that would otherwise integrate into CRM, ERP, Oracle's, SAP, whatever database, otherwise platform the end customer might be using. And interesting enough, sometimes that adaptation layer between us and the CRM is actually done by the end customer directly because they have their own system integration arm. Other time we have partners that come in and they do the adaptation as a system integrator could do. It's our platform is pretty flexible, so I would say that we can be a standalone RTLS, and we have probably the majority of the project where we are. But then if there is a need to complement because of the use case the environment requires, that absolutely it is possible. And on the tax side, which is the lower layer, we have our own reference devices, but we also have a pretty rich ecosystem of tag providers because we definitely do not want to hardware lock any of the customers. So Bluetooth is actually great for that, and or tracking scanners. We can track scanner just if you install an app. We are definitely not building the scanners or the mobile devices.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a core that can be complemented or just used standalone.
But are there like warehouse management systems? Is that like a typical integration point? I can imagine companies that want to track pallets moving around in real time where this would be a good function. Can you speak to some of those? What are the industries where this remarkable capability that you have really shines? Because I think all of us as technologists think this is really cool, but you as a business, you obviously have over the last decade figured out where is it that people really need real time and precise location? Because a lot of people will want, you ask someone, do you want the data slowly or quickly? And they, yeah, of course I want it quickly. Do you want it accurate or non-accurate? Yeah, I want it accurate. But it comes down to where do they really need it? And what is it that you've found that are the applications where they really need the level of accuracy that you provide, which is really beyond any other Bluetooth technique or approach?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's, for instance, what we always say when we talk to a customer is like, okay, this is your need. It's technically feasible, but is it business reasonable? And that's
Yes,
how we
love that.
separate the two things. And sometimes we are also constructively challenging. some of the lead we get and say, if you want, we can do it, but is it really business-wise what you can enjoy? So to your question, what we have found as very mature or more mature vertical markets, and mature in this case, I mean markets where the value of asset tracking, RTLS, indoor positioning seems to have found a way through the chasm, the famous chasm that everybody is trying to cross. I would say that in logistics, definitely that's a place because you can directly correlate cost, whether is related to operation, productivity, or general parts and asset tracking. So logistics is definitely a very important market. And for us in particular, when we talk about logistics, it's anything that moves fast in logistics. Think about the parcel terminal. Think about freight forwarding, cross-docking. Whenever you have a facility where things are coming in and out within 24, 48 hours, that's where we found more and more customers with the understanding of the value that an RTLS location system can bring into them. When we talk to warehousing, of course, everyone wants to know where the assets are, or they are tracking the forklifts, or they have other use cases, which are also very valuable, don't get me wrong. But that's where we see that can be tough in some cases to justify the return of investment. Because I remember going to visit some of these distribution facility with racks all the way to the ceiling and beside the fact that the robotics, it's taking over those spaces because everything is like in a three-dimensional chess, very well placed. But also in some case, the customers practically are using pen and paper, so to say, or manual input to a database. And those goods, they stay there for months, weeks. So they are not a quick turnaround. So they don't always need to know, to the minute where things are, which is different in cross-docking when you have a truck at the dock, and like in an airport, the truck has a certain time to be on the dock, and either the goods are in the truck or the truck is leaving without the goods. Mm-hmm. And if you make the truck wait, then you have the avalanche chain effect that all the other shipments are late. So, and if you think about the amount of goods that they need to go in a truck, if you can save even a few seconds per search, or if you can avoid that suddenly somebody needs to start running around the facility, that is value for them on a daily basis. So those are, so logistics is one example, and then manufacturing. And manufacturing, it's not necessarily what happens on the assembly line, because again, that is like a pipe, three-dimensional pipe where robots and everything is well orchestrated. But the problem is what is happening outside the assembly line. And most of the factory have square meter that are outside the assembly line. And that's where, for instance, our technology has found a lot of value. MROs, so maintenance and repair, is also an important piece because things comes in, they get disassembled, and you can't mix parts between similar objects that you are disassembling. So anything in this kind of industrial realm seems to be quite important for us. Healthcare is also another one that is quite interesting and definitely a mature vertical market. And we see a good traction also in there. We work a lot with partners into healthcare. And then, the sport for us is a lot of fun and we do it. And then if you're interested, I can tell you some other funny case that we do.
Yeah, I'd like to hear about the weird ones as well as the ones that are really moving the needle. So what are the weirder ones that you?
Well, weird, of course. Maybe if some of our partners hear what I'm saying weird, they might be offended.
Let's say interesting.
Yeah, let's say unconventional.
Okay.
Unconventional, because all of us that has been working in asset tracking and RTLF for many years, we tend to be also very serious sometimes when we talk about RTLS use cases, right? It's about valuable goods. It's about things that matter that you need to track. But for instance, we have a project at the minute where we are tracking trampoline parks. Sorry, kids in trampoline parks.
Oh,
So we practically help one of our partner in Teleplay to practically track the location of the children and to provide services to the family and the parents that are at the trampoline park. And the location of the children is not just for safety and security, but is eventually also for payment system. Like you buy 2 hours, you run out of time. How do you find the kids that are in the trampoline park that need renewal of the bandage?
oh my
So
goodness. Yeah, yeah. You've got like 100 kids, and which ones have got the blue band versus the purple band? But
yeah.
you can make that a science and a process. That's great. That's a great one. I haven't heard that one before.
Yeah, so in general, it's like amusement or entertainment that, and we have a few different that goes in that line. We also have another one very interested in at the minute that we track dogs in dog hotels
Oh,
or dog daycare.
uh-huh.
So when you're working, you're a family, very busy, and you need somebody to take care of your dog, then there are these very special location where you can leave your dog and then take it back in the evening. And of course, you want the well-being for the dog, so you want to know where does he spend time, how does he move, has he done his routine, and
Yes.
so that's a very interesting project. We really like it. We like when our customer challenge us into
Yeah.
new cases. Maybe the most exotic, I remember a project, I'm not gonna make names. We were tracking chimpanzee in a zoo. And and I remember that at one point I was still in the support role. We got phone call from the end customer, said the tag is getting broken. And we were like, "Oh my gosh, what happens?" And then we started to do troubleshooting, but only afterwards we kind of learned that they were weared as a wristband by the chimpanzee. Yeah, of course, they really love to smash the tags. So that was it was a research, so it was a time limited kind of
Yeah.
and but it was very interesting.
Well, so those are particularly interesting things. If you were to go to the other end of the spectrum, if those are the exceptions, what's the rule? What, because these tags have a price. How much does a Cooper tag cost these days?
So it really depends on the provider of the tag. So if you're getting tag from Quuppa, some of our reference tag, let's say we are around the 10, $15 per device. Of course, if you buy in volume, you get some discount, but I would say that that's typically is the price. If you are otherwise looking for something more specific, then we have partners that can make tags at even less sub $10 per device, even closer to 5. And we have other partners that, again, for specific cases, they can maybe go in the level of $1, $2. And then when we go into something even more extreme, when, for instance, we can work with company like Williot that,
Hmm.
for instance, can provide the Bluetooth signal that we can read, then we are at the level of cents. And then if we go to the upper level, we have tags that they cost hundreds of euros or dollars, because then you combine it with GPS and many other connectivity technology. Or if you go into ATEX or EX, certification, then they are in the hundreds of dollars. So I would say that the fork is pretty wide, but that's the beauty in a way of having an ecosystem of type provider and leveraging on a technology that has already billion of radios out there that you can try to meet the need of the request of the customer.
That's very helpful. And then, well, let's go to the other end of the link and the locators, where, because since we spoke, I think you've had a new generation of locators that you've introduced. What's the new generation, and roughly how much does it cost, just so that people can do a general sanity test?
Right. So we have changed and renewed the locator generation from what we are called generation to what nowadays we call the Q generation. And we have two products. One is Q17 and one is Q35. Since we are engineer at heart, so the number is the diameter of the
Okay.
device. So it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
So the Q17 is mainly designed for indoor, and it has a more like appealing design, smaller, more mimetic in a way if you are going to install it indoor. And then we have a Q35, which is actually IP rated. We live in Finland, so we know what weather can be, and it's for outdoor use, long range and outdoor use. So, but also the outdoor, the Q35 is often used indoor in heavy industrial environment because it's very dusty, they can get very dirty. And the installation height, we have deployments at 30 meters high indoor. When you roll a plane into a hangar, the ceiling tend to be very high in that case. So we definitely, or they are outdoor in light poles. The cost of installation of the device is roughly like an access point nowadays. So if you think about an indoor access point for industrial use, that's the ballpark. It's a few hundred of dollars, and then again in volumes that the cost goes down. And for outdoor is a little bit more because of the ruggedness and the type of device similar to the access point for outdoor. But then also there, then the price scale down with the cost, with the volume. And then the big difference between the old and the new generation, despite general performance and mounting and easiness of mounting, and so is the fact that we actually have two radios inside the devices. And with those two radios, we can actually get very creative on what to do. So, for instance, one of the products that we have launched recently is what we call the Q-Link. So, in the case in which you cannot run a cable, but you might have power, so the locator would just start wirelessly to communicate with each other. So in that way, you can lower the deployment cost very significantly. So there are different schemes that have been used also for networking. We have introduced a device called Qport, which is a data aggregator and power splitter, so that we can get one PoE line out of a switch. And I'm talking about PoE, not PoE plus, like 15 watts. And we can power up to 7 locators just with one switch port. So that is also reducing very much the cost of deployment and the cost of the switch in the cabinets as well, because sometimes you pay per ports that you use. The locator consume very little, is like 1 watt per device. So that's how we can complement that.
Very interesting. Yeah. So clearly the product's maturing. You've had the experience, and so you're looking at optimizing and looking at how do you make this scale at the lowest cost. Let's just go back to what is it that typically your tags are on. So we've talked about chimpanzees. We've talked about children. If you had to kind of do an analysis of what are the things that you track most often, what's at the top of that list?
I would say general assets. So assets, it could be tools. Tools can be drills. It can be specific screwdrivers or boxes that they are used to transport material, roller cages or any other transport unit. It's definitely into that. And sometimes are the part itself. But the part itself, then it really depends on on the type of business. Like if we are in the automotive, we track the car directly. So what they do, they just take one of our tag and they put it on the dashboard of the car, inside the car. And that is also one of our differentiating factor. Like we are able to accurate track the car even when the tag is inside the car. And that is very important because otherwise, if you put it on the outside, then you have to attach it to the chassis of the car. But think about a freshly painted brand new car. You don't want to attach anything on the outside. So it needs to be able to be track reliable, even though inside a metal box, so to say. So that's also where some of our expertise and robustness of our platform really comes into play. So the tag is not in line of sight all the time, as you can imagine. So that is one. We also have been tracking in a lot of cases the device itself through a mobile app. So, for instance, when we go into manufacturing or logistics, we can take any device that could be Android or, for instance, iOS. You just install an app, you use the API from the device, and you turn the device into a tag. We call it tag emulation. And in that way, you can practically not have to attach a physical device, but you can track the device with the same accuracy. So that is also something that is gaining a lot of interest, because once you track that device, you can start to combine scanning with real-time location. And that gives you a complete different dimension into data analytics and process flow analytics. Or in some case, we can just track the device itself, because surprisingly enough, these scanners that might cost $1,000 per device, they are forgotten on the pallet that then goes on the truck, and they never come back. So sometimes we just tell them, hey, your device is leaving.
Yeah. And I love this architecture because this gives you a way of tracking things at an incredibly low cost. So if the phone or the Zebra scanner is scanning a QR code or NFC tag or RFID tag or even a Wiliot tag, you know where the scanner is, then by inference, you know where the asset is, and you can gradually kind of update that. I think that's a very interesting architecture. One of the other architectures that we've talked about in previous discussions, and in those discussions we get into more of the details of the fact that you guys can do X, Y, and Z, and how many locators that are required to do that. So we won't retread that ground unless there's anything major that's changed. But I do remember you talking about an interesting architecture where your locator goes on the forklift and the tags actually are going in the ceiling. So rather than the classic locators in the ceiling and tags on the thing that's moving around, you flip it and the thing that's moving around is that Quuppa locator, and then you have a few tags in the ceiling. Is that something that you've seen take off? Is anyone doing that, or was it just a really cool idea?
It's one of our exotic architecture.
Yeah.
I would say that we haven't really packaged it as a prime product offering.
Okay.
It's one of those things that is like, is it technically possible? I would say yes, you can do it.
Yeah. Okay.
And we had a few projects where the customer is trying to do that, even with a discrete success. Personally, I think that after a while that you do it, you actually figure out that it's not as easy as it sounds to maintain and to necessarily operate. And also it becomes very specific because, yes, you can track your forklift in the warehouse, but then if your appetite for RTLS grows, you can't put a locator attached to a box. So then you tend to think about the reverse architecture, and then you're back to square one. That is like maybe you put a tag on the forklift and you leave the infrastructure up there.
Better to bite the bullet and
It can go both ways, but it's interesting that you bring this example because we actually have a few different cases where, so the forklift you just described is one of our exotic architecture. We have done other one for rescue, search and rescue, where we actually attach a locator to like an handheld device, like a scanner. So the locator
Yeah.
is here. And then there was an app where the app was showing like a radar what the locator is seeing. So you can actually use that device if you need to search for something. So we have done similarly during Nokia time where we miniaturized the locator inside the phone. That was CES 2009, 2010. So in a way, it was very early AirTag.
Yeah.
Open the phone, find the tag. But this one is different because with the locator, you get more accuracy and precision and range. So you could
Yeah.
use it for really search and rescue. And so that we have done. And then another architecture that is exotic, it's when we do, for instance, AOD, so angle of departure.
Yes.
Means that the locator becomes the transmitter, and then you have a receiving device that then computes its own position. This is something that still what we are thinking to try to push into the standardization further, but it will take a little bit of time. But we have prototype running, and we could do it.
And I think we have a demonstration of that in a previous episode. It's coming back to me. I remember us recording that. That was cool. So if anyone wants to know more about angle of departure, go through the Mr. Beacon archives. You can find that. I do want to get an update from you on competitive positioning, because things have evolved. You mentioned the Apple AirTag, which of course has ultra wideband,
Yeah, it's a combination between Bluetooth and ultra
Bluetooth,
wideband.
and
So
UWB.
yeah.
So yeah, what are your latest thoughts? Where do you see the pros and cons of UWB? I was so disappointed when Apple did that. I was like really looking forward to angle of arrival coming into the phone. Maybe they'll get religion and keep things simpler and do it that way. But how do you guide people when they're looking at these two technologies? Because it's come down in price quite a bit now. Obviously, the volume's gone up, partly, I guess, thanks to Apple.
Yeah. I mean, in general, I can hear two questions there. So let me answer separately. So I like ultra wideband technology, as I like Wi-Fi in all this conjugation of positioning, whether it's RTT or whether it's just based on RSSI. Bluetooth has its own conjugation with RSSI, AUA, AUD. Now they're ranging with the channel sounding. And ultra wideband has its own conjugation with time of arrival, time difference of arrival, or also their AUA. So to me, if I put my researcher hat on, so I go back into the Nokia time, I still believe that the holistic solution to the general problem of indoor positioning is hybrid technology and hybrid positioning. And that's probably what will happen one day on the phone, especially when you have to run all the technology on the phone. When it comes to industrial, over there is a little bit different because the problem is, if you like, a little bit less complex in the sense that you have a facility. You don't have a phone with a person that takes a plane and go indoor, outdoor, concert, swimming, and all these other environment. Typically, you have a more defined problem that you're trying to solve. And even though it can be a large project, at the moment we are deploying a single project of 2 million square meter, multiple building, indoor and outdoor. It's a big problem, but it's still a well-defined problem. So in that case, you can practically maybe use or pick more a technology subset that would be more appropriate for the kind of use case you want to run, like tracking scanners or tracking a variety of tags at different price points. So that could be the way. So generally, I think that every technology has a merit, and absolutely, I believe that ultra wideband is particularly good, especially when you might need to do a point-to-point kind of measure, and you want to do that in a certain fashion. I think that definitely he has the merit. Position is also very good in particular environment that are challenging. when it comes to industrial side with a lot of metal, we have been competing with ultra wideband a lot. Sometimes they win, sometimes we win. But then the winning or losing is not about the centimeter or the accuracy or the latency, because that's comparable. It's more into the flavor of the type of solution that you are giving to the customer, or the type of assets that, again, you want to track. So it can change a lot. So that's about the technology, Stephen. And then if I go more into the AirTag, or effectively general asset tracking, I believe that the market is exploding in that respect. I think that
Yeah.
from the consumer market to the industrial market, there is definitely a strong growing interest in getting to know where my assets are.
Yeah.
And I believe that there is a number of reasons when that is happening, and the macroeconomy situation is also playing a role into that. Because I think that a lot of industries, even in what we might call the first world, where there's a lot of money and a lot of investment, I think they have recognized that they can't just keep on buying whenever they need something. And especially large organizations that they might have their own storage, inventory, warehouses, they actually have accumulated a lot of stocks, which even goes into their balance sheet at the end of the day, but a lot of stocks of assets and good that are not used in the way which they should. And all of that sitting capital, it's something that they should otherwise make a better use for. And everything starts by counting the chicken. So knowing where is my assets, how many are there, where they are. So, and maybe also the AirTag has been actually a way, taking it from the consumer market, to help people understand that, by putting a very inexpensive sometime device into a box, you suddenly make that device become observable, become alive. And that's, I believe, what Viliot is doing a lot with the ambient
Yes.
IoT. And, going from zero to something is an infinite improvement. So it's quite impressive.
Yeah, I think Apple AirTag is a great thing because it kind of brings to everyone this concept that things can be tracked, and why should we accept losing things? And you can see it in the luggage tracking market. The airlines are all scrambling to respond to track bags in better ways, because now consumers can put an Apple AirTag in their case, and suddenly they're saying, "Well, I can," they know that works, and they're asking, "Well, why don't you have something that's better, that's more scalable?" So I think it's definitely good for us. I got one last competitive thing, and then I want to just finish off on maybe just one or two other use cases. I want to come back and ask you a bit more about that massive deployment that you touched on. But what's your view on the channel sounding technology that the SIG announced recently? What's the relevance there as compared to angle of arrival?
Well, it's a very interesting technology, and is actually, technically speaking, a great achievement, because if you think about the past, where there was the belief that the only way to reliably compute range was by using ultra wideband, which inherently has a lot of bandwidth, and by doing the conversion, you have a lot of time resolution, and that's how you can measure range. In the case of Bluetooth, you have a very narrow signal, which practically means you can't do the same game in order to compute the range. But the engineering team all around the world, everybody contributing to the Bluetooth SIG, has done a fantastic job to kind of crack the nut and be able to find a way to reliably compute the distance. So the distance is definitely something that can complement greatly the angular estimation. And that's, by the way, one of the reasons why we also have a secondary radio in the locator. So eventually we could make use of the range estimation as well when doing certain kind of calculation. The difference in general between ranging estimation or AOA is that the ranging estimation often requires two-way communication, which means that, relatively speaking, consumes more power, and
Yeah.
also more limited in terms of capacity because it takes more airspace, and by doing that, you have less capacity within a certain cell of the system. While if you do angle, it's a one-way communication only. So that means more power effectiveness and capacity. And I think that the channel sounding in general now coming into Bluetooth, it practically brings really a completeness into Bluetooth because now you can really do positioning with the Bluetooth radio using only RSSI, using angles in both conjugation AOA and AUD, or if you want, do ranging. And then it's up to the provider of the solution or the configuration of the system to leverage what is the best combination. In a way, it's like three technology into one, so to say.
Yeah. No, I think that you've hit the nail on the head. And Wiliot, for instance, is probably the lowest cost Bluetooth tag. Will not support channel sounding, but could support angle of arrival. So if you're looking at truly high volumes, then that's something to bear in mind as far as going for scale. So, any last things that you want to point to in terms of customer trends, places where people are seeing a good return on this technology? Should we bring it back to business?
Yeah, I mean, what we have been in, so myself, I've been doing positioning technology since the early 2000s. So now is more than 20 years. And I remember when I started, I had people asking me, why do you do indoor positioning with the dedicated technology? Why don't you just use GPS? Or when we were trying to offer an infrastructure, the answer was like, well, GPS is for free. Why do you need a dedicated technology? So clearly, the market was very immature back then into understanding why a technology is actually in need to complement a GPS for non-GPS covered area like indoor or urban canyon or urban environment. But then also what we notice is that there are more and more end customers that over the past 2 decades, they actually have tried different technologies. Sometimes they were driven a lot by pricing because they didn't know what use case to really leverage and benefit for. So long story short, I think that the in average, the whole market, whether it's industrial, healthcare, whether it's the security and safety, entertainment, sport, is recognizing the value of location data to complement everything that they already have and understanding the location data in all these conjugations. So it could also be a simple presence detection. It doesn't need to be, centimeter level accuracy. Already the presence detection can massively improve the way in which they operate and the asset management and the cost and so on. And when they come, for instance, to us, oftentimes they actually come with a very clear idea in mind. We don't even have to discuss about what is a positioning technology.
Mm.
It's mainly what can we give to them for them to maximize the return of investment. So internally, we have this joke saying that the best customer for us are the ones that are once bitten and twice shy,
Hmm.
meaning that they have already tested something, they have already educated themselves, and then when they come to us, we can have a much more constructive discussion. And we tend to be very transparent, maybe is in the nature of being a Nordic company. And sometimes when they describe their use case, if we don't think that Quuppa is the solution for them, we have no problem to refer them to other technologies and sometimes even competitors. So I believe that in general, we are all in the same boat when it comes to RTLS, and
Hmm.
everybody of us RTLS provider, if we can increase the awareness into location, value, and everyone is going to benefit for it.
Well, I think that's a very mature way of looking at it, and it speaks to you and the company and the fact that your technology is seasoned and has a well-defined place in the ecosystem. But apparently, the last time you were on this show was 2019. I can't believe it was so long ago. It's like ancient history, but it makes sense. It was just before COVID, and so it's good to have you back on. And of course, now your role has changed. So what happened? I can't think of a better person to take the mantle. You're a co-founder. You've been with the company since the beginning. But why did you step up to the CEO role?
Yeah, that's actually it's a good question that, as you can imagine, I've been asked a few times in the past weeks. So,
Yes.
and one of the best comments, by the way, I heard from one of our customer was like, "It's so nice to get into a meeting when the CEO actually knows his product."
Yeah.
That
It's good.
that was quite nice.
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, jokes aside, and as you know, I have a technical background in statistical signal processing, and I'm definitely hardcore when it comes to technology. But over the years and since the foundation of Quuppa, I've been more and more interested into the customer-facing part of the business. And the simple reason for that is because at Nokia, I noticed that, you want to do more, you crack more math, more equation, more algorithm, and it's very exciting. I still love that part. But to me, it's always been more and more intriguing to understand how do you build a business relationship with somebody? How do you build business and trust among people? And I'm a strong believer that business is always done between people, never between companies. Those are the technicalities, the contracts, and all the rest. So when I started at Quuppa, Kimmo did a fantastic job of being our CEO and leading the company for effectively 8 years until 2020. And then when the company grew beyond a certain level, he felt that he wanted to kind of focus more into the technology itself, which is his sweet spot, so to say. And also we decided to take an external CEO. Sami joined the company back then, and he brought a lot of know-how and understanding into how business is done outside the core engineer perspective, but taking other part of the relationship into account. And I've learned a lot working with him for 3 years. I've been always part of the leadership team, and he has been a good mentor to me. And back then, he put me in charge of the product management team, which was also a lot of learnings, because in the past, when Kimmo was the CEO, I was leading the support team for 8 years. So you kind of get the complaint from the partners and the customer, and you get that side of the story. Typically, the product is already in their hand, and now you need to sort out how to support and maintain. But the product management team is, interesting enough, a very different role, because there you get the wishes. It's like, I know the product does this, but I would like it to do something else. So it actually gives you a very different perspective into what you could do. And of course, it forces you to be critical at time, even with the customer itself. In support, you always have to be polite and say, of course, we will do it, because anyway, they have the product. They bought it and they are right to demand certain things. But when you go in product management, they sometimes come with wishes that are not always something that might be in the core of what they actually need. So you have to sometimes do that translation for them. So then Sami unfortunately had to leave Quuppa because of health reason. It was definitely a shock for everybody. Still doing good, we still meet, but he had to take that fork in his life and leave the company. Therefore, already back then, I've been asked whether I wanted to kind of lead Quuppa, but to be honest, I wasn't ready. I didn't feel I was ready, and I felt that there was still some area I couldn't fully understand on how to lead a company, and also I was good in my role. I actually enjoyed my role. So, and also we found a very capable CEO back then, Soile. She joined the company. Sami's already steered the company into a little bit of a different strategic direction. And Soile came in with yet a different background than Kimmo and Sami, more into services. She was accelerating the company and leading it there. Everything went well, and I worked with her for 1 year very closely. Really, really enjoyed working with her. But then at the end of last year, unfortunately, she has to leave Quuppa. That also was a bit of a surprise, but sometimes that happens in business. And yeah, and then they came back to me again, the board, and was asking, Fabio, is this the time? And then I was like, well, actually, this might be the time. And so we are. Sorry, that was a long answer, but
No, it's fascinating. I think people are really interested in who's at the top and people's evolution. We all think about our own evolution, and so seeing you and what you've done, and it's great that you've covered the key parts of the company, getting the customers and looking after the customers and the direction of the product, and that's where a lot of the tough decisions get made. So I think you come incredibly well qualified. You understand the technology, you understand the customers, the partners, and the product. So I'm very, very happy for you. And I've always been a super fan of the company and the product. You have a great culture. And I just love, I've seen your product in action, and it does what it says on the tin. The performance is amazing. And it has an important place to fill in the ecosystem, as we used to call it. It seems to, but anyway, it's you guys are key, and it's great to see you at the helm, Fabio. Well, we're kind of winding up the end of the show. We have the kind of the frothiest, silliest bit where I ask guests about music, and I must have asked you this question before, but I'm going to ask it to you again. Are there 3 songs that you would like to bring to mind that have some meaning to you that we could talk about?
am I still traveling to Mars? I remember in the past
No, actually, that's a very good question. You're not going to Mars anymore. Because everyone was like Space Oddity, and there was a lot of just space things. And what I'm really interested in is the person, not the spaceship. I find songs that kind of mark a time in someone's life or a relationship or something that they went through are the most interesting
So
ones.
I have 3.
You have 3, yes.
Okay, so I would start with Pink Floyd.
Okay.
And it could practically be pretty much any song from the album The Wall. You can pretty much close your eyes and pick one.
Okay.
Love Pink Floyd. I learn about them in the early age. And my father had an LP at home, so I was listening to that. The Wall was the album, so that's why I like it a lot. And I'm actually very happy because they're coming to Helsinki in some capacity in April, and I just bought the ticket last week. So
Fantastic.
I'm gonna hear them live, or at least a subset of them. So
Yeah.
definitely something from Pink Floyd.
That influence of your parents. So when I've had to answer this question, I've often gone back to records that I remember from my parents' record collection that I still listen to. So I'm with you on that that approach. That's a good one.
Yep. So that's Pink Floyd. The second one, I'm gonna make a leap. You might be surprised. This is American country music.
Oh, I am
It's
surprised.
Dixieland music. So I'm a big fan of a band called Alabama.
Okay.
I don't know if you know the band.
Not terribly well, no.
So I would definitely advise anybody to listen to them. They had few great albums, and the one that I particularly like is called Alabama Live. And it's a great album. They are fantastic musicians. I used to play, I still play for my own, for myself. I don't like to perform too much, but keyboards and piano. So, and I like the piano player there and the organ player. So it's keyboard player.
Well, And of course, you lived in the United States for a while. I remember when Fabio came to Washington, or to where was it that you were? Were you in Washington D.C.?
I was right next to Washington D.C. I
Yeah.
lived for almost 2 years in Arlington, Virginia, so just across the Potomac, and
Yeah,
got my family there. We had a blast. I mean, U.S. is a fantastic country, and oh my gosh, we visited so many national parks, and we really love to just jump on a car and go somewhere. And living next to the Appalachia was a great opportunity to explore that area. So it was good. And we listened to a
amazing.
lot of country music while we were living there.
That's what I
Always
was
searching
thinking.
for the local radio transmitting country. And even my
Yeah,
kids, they actually enjoyed a lot.
very cool. Okay, and what's your last choice?
Oh gosh. So the last one I would say it's another leap. So it would be Italian techno from the 90s.
Love that.
Kind of classical Gigi D'Agostino and that kind of techno music. So something that I remember from my youth when I was going to dance in the disco clubs, and definitely there was the hit. So I would say something along that area. There are many bands, so it would be
Right.
groups. Would be hard to choose one. So quite diverse choices. It'd be
Yeah.
depending on the mood.
Okay. Love that. Because you live near Helsinki now, right? In
I
Finland.
correct. I lived actually almost 22 years in Finland now, 23. So pretty much half of my life in Finland, in Helsinki, and originally I'm from the north of Italy, north of Milan.
North of Milan. So where? So is that like Lake Como? Is that north of Milan, or is
It's
that?
actually very close. So I'm pretty much in between Lago Maggiore and Milan. Lake Como is right next to it. So it's that area. It's like going to Como would be, kind of Sunday trip. Just half an hour, you're there.
Okay, that's fascinating. I love Milan. I remember staying there, and there's the original Fiat factory there. I don't know if you know it. They turned it into a shopping mall, but it's the most amazing building with a car racetrack on the roof and a helipad, and the parts used to come in the bottom, and it would make their way up, and they have this spiral ramp, and then eventually the car pops up and it got raced around the track. And so if anyone's in Milan, it's probably like a tourist trap, but for me it was just an incredible piece of architecture and a great tribute to Italian design, which is something that really appeals to me.
Yeah.
And
Very
of
true.
course, Lake Como, one of the most beautiful places in the world, in my opinion. Okay, Fabio. Well, it is always wonderful to have you on the show. Thank you for visiting and getting the top spot in terms of most frequent guests. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you for having me here. It's always a pleasure. And someone wants to reach out and know more, just contact me. We'll surely make some time and discuss more.
Very good. Thanks, Fabio.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching this episode of the Mr. Beacon Ambient IoT podcast here on YouTube. You can listen to this episode on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you enjoyed it, please like and share this video. And be sure to subscribe for more videos. For more information about Wiliot, Ambient IoT, and IoT Pixels, head over to wiliot.com.